Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
And welcome back to The Wilder Ride, where we are getting wilder by the minute, a podcast where we are breaking down and celebrating the film Young Frankenstein, one sold-out opera house performance at a time. I'm your host, I'm Alan Sanders.
And I'm your co-host, Walt Murray.
And joining us for the first time since we embarked on this mad scientist journey of inner discovery, we have Eric Nash, co-host of the Watchmen Minute and guest on many other Movies by Minutes podcasts. Welcome to The Wilder Ride, Eric.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Great to have you join us. And I do this usually with every one of our guests when they're first here. And it just happens to be that you're much later into the movie by the time you're making your debut appearance. So let me start off with this. What are your thoughts in general of Young Frankenstein? And how does this fit in your view of movies and sort of like your favorites and your go-to films?
Well, just as far as comedies, it is definitely like top three. You know, there's only a couple others that kind of jump back and forth depending on my mood as to what I'll say is my favorite, but it's right there in the top three. And then in movies in general, gosh, it's got to be in the top 50 maybe, if not even better.
When you first heard about us, getting ready to do this podcast, and we said we announced that Young Frankenstein was going to be our season one, was that something that sort of jumped at you? Did you want to hear about the film? I know obviously it must be one of your favorites because you said it's your top three of comedy, but what were your initial thoughts knowing that this was going to be yet another addition to the Movies by Minutes podcast format?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think I really had a pretty good clue, and I've listened to everything up till now that you've released.
And you're still here.
The behind the scenes stuff, a lot of that stuff. I mean, I kind of had heard about, and even I think there was a Young Frankenstein classic showing a year or so ago, and it even had a little clip from Mel Brooks in it at the local movie theater.
Awesome.
And, so he had a little bit to say too, but.
It was one of those things.
I've kind of forgotten a bit now, but
when you say you had a chance to go to the local theater, was it something like the Fathom events and things where they're bringing back?
Exactly. Yeah, I'm awfully sure that's what it was.
See, I'm mad that I did not catch that when it came back because I've yet to ever see this movie in the theater, and I think it'd be fun to just do that, especially by the time we get done with this, because we've even had fans of Young Frankenstein that watch it religiously, if not yearly, sometimes 2-3 times a year, say, I never noticed that, or I didn't know that, and that to me, that makes me feel like I've job well done.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think. I think I've seen it 3 times in the theater. It is. It's a different experience. It kind of blows you away at points because it is such a big movie.
Well, let's go ahead and get the let's get the minute underway. Let's get the discussion going. We start minute 78 in the Opera House. We continue to show the camera panning down, and we came down from one of the theater boxes down across to the ground level floor. We see it's a packed house, and we will end with Dr. Frankenstein, and he just told us last minute that he wants us to call him Frankenstein now. We're no longer calling him Frankenstein. That Dr. Frankenstein takes the stage to one lone person clapping. So let's start this off, and we'll go straight to our guest on this one. What I love about the opening shot as we move into these minutes, because there's not a lot of dialogue, we do see a full house, is we notice that the cops make an entrance in the back of the theater.
Yeah, they're not messing around with security.
Wait, I said to our guest, not to you.
Oh.
Pay attention,
I'm a
Walt.
guest.
You're not a guest. Let's try that intro again. Thank you, Walt.
You're welcome.
I appreciate this moment of editing, brought to you by Walt Murray. Walt Murray, who sucks at... So, guest Eric, what do you think of this opening shot watching the cops decide that they want to attend this particular performance?
Oh yeah, well, just kind of the way they enter through that curtain, it's a little fumbly in a sense, and then it's even more so when Kemp himself comes through with his arm sticking up, and there's that squeak when one of his guys puts it down for him.
Yeah, when he's got to move the ratcheted arm. I couldn't figure out why his arm was stuck out to the side like that, because normally he positions his arm for some purpose. I'm getting ready to light a cigar. I'm getting ready to bang on a door. I'm getting ready to put darts in them, or I'm going to pretend I'm going to shoot darts. But this is the first time where he walks out like it's stuck again.
I was wondering if there was some scene before this that got cut or something, or if that was just some random...
That's all Kenneth Mars. There's nothing about that in the script that the cops come out, and I do think it's funny that it's the first time that somebody else has to manipulate his arm for him.
Right.
The dude's like, your arm's in my face.
I think it's him being pompous and wanting to have this kind of entrance to, it's not a grand entrance necessarily, but something of an entrance of circumstance with his arm raised, I think.
Well, and if he had walked in with the arm at his side, it wouldn't have stood out that it was Inspector Kemp.
Yeah.
But the way he does come in, you're right.
That's a good point.
It does kind of highlight that there is no doubt it is Inspector Kemp.
Well, and his arm is definitely outstretched before he parts through the curtain because he swats the curtain back with and great flourish.
Yeah, absolutely.
Takes his place, and he's so proud. He's got one arm on his hip, the other one's sitting straight out, and the dude next to him's like, dude, come on, put your arm down.
Come on. Well, which also is kind of funny because the guy, it isn't like it's some weird new movement for him. It seems very familiar that he would just knock the inspector's arm out of the way. So you kind of wonder if this isn't a common occurrence.
No, probably something that his fellow officers are used to, which is why the last time we saw him, his arm was stuck in the salute, and as he's diving in the back of his car, his driver salutes him like, it's just Kemp saluting.
Just how it is.
You're used to dealing with Kemp.
Well, and they've got a bunch of cops there, too.
Walt, I was going to come to you on this one. Your dad was the former FBI. You've got a background in law enforcement. You're a private investigator.
Done some security work.
When I've gone to a concert, generally the security is up front to keep you from rushing the stage. When I see the security showing up behind me, it means they're making sure nobody leaves.
Yeah, there's something going on here. And yeah, I mean, you might not notice the security at the back sometimes, but yeah, they've kind of got this place blanketed.
Why? Why do you think that is? I'm going to ask you, because I'm sure you know, because we know the story.
I'm just going to take a shot in the dark on this
We could take a wild stab. Why would the police be showing up at this one-night-only performance?
I would say, just guessing here, that it's because this has happened 5 times before.
You think that might have been it? And maybe the last time Inspector Kemp as a kid ran into one of the monsters, he just so happened to rip his arm out of his socket.
Yeah, that's. I think the town has a long and short memory on this one.
In general, Kemp has a pretty good attitude considering his run-in with a previous creature.
Yeah, and the fact that he, the last conversation with him included a little bit about, are you reanimating life here? No, not me. No,
exactly.
I would never do that. And here we are on stage in the spotlight with the reanimated monster.
Yeah, you almost want to see a scene where he's like, I thought you told me to was not doing the reanimation. What is this? What is this?
Hey, I want to see a spin-off of Dr. Kemp. I want a whole Dr. Kemp movie.
You mean Inspector Kemp?
I've called him Dr. Kemp, Professor Kemp, everything but Inspector Kemp. Yes, Inspector Kemp.
He's almost a miniature. Maybe he's the precursor to Inspector Gadget with that arm.
Or Inspector Clouseau.
Eric, when we have you ever been to a theatrical performance or an opera house where the police all show up in droves to guard the exits?
Certainly not. No.
No.
Well, and I was thinking, kind of like hired security. They would be down at front, but so maybe they're not hired security.
I almost feel like they're there because they're expecting something. They're there because they don't trust what the good doctor's about to do.
No, I think the only movie I've ever been to where the police were actually there was the Midnight movie when they showed the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Well, yeah, I was going to say
that. It's kind of predictable that there could be some problems.
Yeah, things could get out of hand, so we have the police here for you. And the thing is, with the way they come in through the curtains and everything, it almost makes you think that the theater's reversed or something. Like, wait, they're coming out on stage and you realize, no, that's the back of the house. One thing that I hadn't noticed until watching this 1 minute at a time, because all the police, save one, line up at the very back of the theater. But one promptly marches down, and only one side, there's 2 aisles. It's a theater where you've got 2 sort of smaller wings, and then the main body sits in the middle. But one officer actually makes his way all the way down the left side of the theater, approaching the stage.
Mm-hmm. That's the new guy.
He's like, hey, stupid, get back over here.
You got the front.
Eric, before we get into the MC for the evening, the last minute we just left as we walked into this theater, we had a sign sitting outside that said, Bucharest Academy of Science, tonight only, Dr. F. Frankenstein presents The Creature in a startling new experiment in reanimation, presented in cooperation with TNS, the Transylvania Neurological Society. So, Walt and I were asking ourselves this last minute, so we're going to ask you as we head into this minute. There's a pretty packed house. Are all of these folks part of the Bucharest Academy of Science?
Well, I think I would say maybe roughly half of them seem to be probably our spouses, not to be too sexist or anything like that, but
oh, they could be.
There's some elderly ladies for if this really is the 70s.
Yeah, it could be that we've got the spouses of all these people. So the question I have for you is, when we last left the doctor in the cell, before we faded to the sign, before we got to this minute where, Eric, you are now officially joining us, he was making a comment to the creature that I'm going to teach you all of these things, and then we are going to show the world what an achievement in science we are bringing. Not since the creation of fire has there been anything this amazing. So how long has it been since that fade to black, and now we're in the opera house?
For what I know is to come. I would think months.
It does seem like we have to, at some point, especially on repeated viewings, we have to look back and say, there's obviously been a lot of work being done on the monster, a lot of work with the doctor, a lot of work to trust that he can be brought out in public in front of the lights and in front of a crowded house.
Yeah, a lot of acting coaches involved, I'm sure. And I mean, you take him from not being able to talk to being able to sort of sing.
Well, I don't want to give anything away. We don't do anything. We don't get to the singing this week.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So we have to cut that now, Walt.
You're welcome. I'm so out of sorts on where we are.
It is hard. Let me ask you this, Eric, because we're gonna, since we've paused for Walt, is it hard sometimes when you're doing this movies by minute format not to jump what's coming up in the next 2-3 minutes?
Oh no, yeah, it's understandable. Yeah, I mean, we don't have a hard and fast spoiler rule kind of thing, but we do make fun of it on our show too. Well, we play with it.
You play with it? You're okay with you jumping around? We try our best not to too much, except for when we need to sort of like say, spoiler alert, this is what's going to happen. But we even have had guests who have a hard time trying to not jump to the end of the movie for some reason. So,
well, we've had a couple that don't want to. They don't want to wait. They're going to go ahead and
right. Yeah, let me tell you exactly what I think about this movie. Yeah. So, as the house lights dim, it's an interesting effect here, but are a lot of people smoking in the theater?
Yeah, I was wondering that too. It's like a fog machine.
Because I don't see anybody with a cigarette, but just as the lights start to dim, after all the Keystone Cops have made their way to the back of the theater, and the lights are dimming, and you get a sense that there's a spotlight that's going to be coming onto the stage, you see this waft of just smoke from I don't know where, sort of filling the frame. It's just
it's like you're at a
It's just like
concert.
the whole place has been smoking. Does that just bother you?
Yeah, I noticed it when it happened, and it really, the way the light hits it, it kind of obscures your view of the audience. You can't see
the audience through the fog. Yeah, that's being lit up. Eric, do you think they do that so that way we get the sense that, hey, there's a spotlight? It feels weird that we don't see anybody smoking, and yet it's a smoke-filled room all of a sudden.
Yeah, either to show the spotlight better, or possibly it's almost like it slows down in speed too, so it's like they were trying to extend it.
I wonder
that part of this scene.
I wonder if this is to show us that people in Transylvania have a gas emission problem. Maybe they eat too many burritos and things before going to the theater.
It could be. Maybe we could ask our German friend.
He's still in the Oktoberfest hall having fun. I know that generally speaking, when you would have had candlelight or some kind of flames, or if people were allowed to smoke in the theater, there would always be that smoky haze. But outside of modern clubbing today, where they pipe in the smoke machine just for the effect, I couldn't figure out why they did this. It's just fog or smoke for the sake of smoke, because it doesn't come from anywhere. We can't reference it to anybody.
And this is lit electrically, so there's not
there's no
candles or anything like that. Yeah, and then when they do show the audience, you don't see anybody smoking.
Not that I could see. I've been trying to freeze frame and look, and I can't find anyone who's got a cigarette.
Yeah, it's kind of a very odd thing to have in there.
And by the way, if it's one person smoking, they got a problem.
They have a huge problem.
This is more than a 2-pack a day fix.
Yeah, it's like Cheech and Chong in the front row.
This is like rolling down the window when the car's in the median. Say, hey man, what's up?
Kind of grabs you by the boo-boo, don't it? Hey, man. What? What? Oh. It was delicious. Man.
Mostly Maui Wowie, man.
Yeah?
But it's got some Labrador in it.
What's Labrador?
It's dog.
What?
Yeah, my dog ate my stash, man. Had it on the table and the little motherfucker ate it, man.
Yeah?
So I had to follow him around the little baggie for 3 days before I got it back.
Cheech and Chong up in
How
smoke.
fast do you think you were going? Oh, 70, 80, 3. You were going 3 miles
Going
an hour.
3. Oh, man, sorry. Jeez, OP. Someone is definitely with a bong down there. I'm going to insert the bong noises now. It's the one dude up front like, hey, it's the creature.
This is a Skinner concert.
different show. Oh, it's tomorrow night's performance. So,
Well, and it's also weird, too, that you only see the smoke in the spotlight. You don't see it anywhere else. It's a very odd lighting.
and that's
there.
unfortunately with filmmaking. I mean, that's a lot of times why if you want to see a spotlight, they'll have to smoke up the room or the theater because the way the camera lens and the optics of it versus the human eye, sometimes you don't see the smoke or the fog unless it's really, really blasted with a spotlight.
That's interesting.
Now, we've got this MC who takes to the stage after everybody kind of quiets down. We've already seen the cops get in place. We've seen the lights come up, or the spotlights come up as the house lights come down. He's got an interesting accent here, Walt.
Yeah, he does.
Because this is not your typical English accent. Most everybody either has the German accent, really harsh, like Inspector Kemp, or somewhat of a Transylvania/German, like Frau Blucher. But most everybody's got a British accent in this.
Yeah, and his is kind of different from everybody else, I think, in the movie.
It is different. I can't put my finger on it. Eric, any idea where is this like another actor's version of a Transylvanian accent?
It might be like a more pompous type, upper class take on it.
He definitely is trying to come across.
Not that we don't have a couple other characters, I think, that are supposed to be in the upper class. There's a ton that are definitely lower class.
Yeah, we have some serious characters in this movie.
The mobsters, essentially the mob that always forms in these movies.
When he's talking, I got a couple of questions about this guy. We're going to talk about the actor in just a second. But when the MC is talking, did anybody have a hard time understanding when he was saying the word famous?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had to go back and listen a couple times to figure out what he was saying.
Because he says fahmeese
Yeah.
and infamous. I was like, oh, famous and infamous. Okay,
Right.
fine. But I had never heard anybody pronounce the word famous fahmeese and then jumps to infamous. It's interesting.
Well, and Eric,
I'm
you
quite
have
sure
some...
as a kid that I did not really catch everything he was saying. That was and even as a young adult, I even had one job interview where it was a guy with such a thick accent. I thought he was speaking speaking English but with a German accent, but it was just such a thick British accent.
Oh,
I
that's
just
interesting.
mistook it.
Well, Eric, you have some information on this actor. What can you tell us about him?
Norbert Schiller. And the IMDb listing for his role was MC at Frankenstein Show. And the craziest thing I saw about him is that he was actually in 1958. He was in a movie, Frankenstein 1970.
Oh, really? So
Yeah.
so
you have a connection as far as actors go.
That
I don't
is
know if you had
interesting.
that
Not his first Frankenstein rodeo.
So 4 years prior, well, 3 years, I guess, when you start looking at filming, but 3 to 4 years before, in terms of release, we'll say 4 years from release date.
In terms of release, it's 58.
Oh, 50. I thought you said 70.
Well, that's the name
That's
of the
the
movie.
name of the movie,
Frankenstein
Frankenstein
1970.
Yeah, that's actually a Frankenstein movie. I've never seen it.
And it came out when?
In like
22 years earlier. Or no, 12 years earlier. 1958.
Holy crap.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody's ever seen it.
I've never even heard of it. I've never even heard of that movie.
Yeah,
That's why I thought
it's not really.
I
seen
heard
as
you say
being...
1970, but I thought you were telling the year. I didn't realize that was the name of the damn movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no.
I had to go back and forth myself a couple times. So what's going on here?
Holy All right, so obviously I didn't do enough prep to know what that was, but does anybody know what that one was about?
No, nobody does. I don't think anybody's ever seen it. I don't even think it's out there on DVD or...
I can only tell you that the quick little summary for it is, needing money, the last of the Frankensteins leases his castle out to a film company as he tries to complete his ancestors' gruesome experiments at creating life. So I guess this must be one of those movie in a movie things. They're making a movie and yet something's happening that's obviously the movie.
And it definitely is not seen as part of the Frankenstein.
Oh no, this isn't canon.
Anything like that. It's...
I am amazed and know not what to say. I had no idea that someone in 1958 put out a movie called Frankenstein 1970. Hey, if he was trying to predict young Frankenstein, he only missed it by 4 years.
Yeah, not too bad. Not too shabby.
Well, this actor definitely has a unique accent, but I will tell you, as we look at the script, some of the lines were cut. I don't know if they filmed them or not because I could not find an outtake, but let me give you what he says and then some of the additional lines. Obviously, we have the opening where he says, "Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, tonight I have the special privilege of introducing to you a man whose family name was both famous and infamous." And then there's a slight murmur in the audience. Then he continues, "But who embodies today the highest aspirations of a new generation and a new world. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Baron Freidrich von Frankenstein." So this is an example, Walt, where I'm kind of glad they cut the back half of that monologue, even if the actor may have felt like he got cheated of his screen time.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Again, another example of either the editors or the director doing a good job of really consolidating the lines.
Eric, do you think we needed to leave the lines about the highest aspirations of a new generation and of a new world?
Yeah, I'm glad they're not there, I think, yeah.
I think it ends just where it needs to, where he's basically saying both famous and infamous. I present to you Dr. Baron Freidrich von Frankenstein. I think it works. That's exactly where it needs to be.
Perfect.
So either they filmed it and edited it out that way, because for Eric's benefit, I know you've been listening to the episodes, but for anybody who's maybe listening for the first time because they're only fans of Eric Nash and they're not fans of The Wilder Ride, this movie was actually about 50 to 60% longer when they had their first cut. They took about an hour out of it when it comes to the editing session. And one of the rules of thumb was for every 3 jokes that failed, the one that worked, they kept. So they really pared a lot of this down. And it's been fun looking at the script and trying to see, is the stuff in the script, would it have been interesting to leave or is it better being out? And except for maybe 1 or 2 places so far overwhelmingly, we're siding with the editors and with Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder with that marathon editing session that most of the stuff on the cutting room floor is best served there.
Yeah, but it also does show what a good wordsmith Gene Wilder is, because he does write some great dialogue in this movie, even though a lot of it does get cut.
Well, I think what gets cut, and Eric, maybe you can talk to this, a lot of times when we find out about what's been cut, we realize we don't need that much, that between the actor and the expression on their faces and sort of just the intonation with what lines are in the movie, a lot of the extra stuff probably wasn't needed anyway.
Oh, yeah, I think it's a classic less is more take on things, that you don't have to go on and on and on. Just get the bullet points.
Now, we know this guy's the MC. And I don't know enough about the etiquette and style of dress, but did he win an award? Is he wearing a medal for being like a champion MC? Or
that is funny. I was wondering what that was. It's almost like a...
Because normally I would associate a medal like that as if you are representing your family as a royal member of your family, or you've got some sort of crest or honor, but he's the MC. He can't even
like
say the word
of
famous.
Valor or
it's
Olympic.
The order of some valor.
Yeah.
He survived another night of theater.
Well, maybe.
And I don't know enough about it, but I just was wondering, why the medal? Why is he wearing some kind of distinguished honor around his neck?
Yeah, I mean, is he supposed to be one of the scientists, and he's introducing...
Oh, I wonder, what if he is the head of the Bucharest Academy of Science?
He may be. Or the Transylvania...
the Transylvania Neurological Society. He could be... Eric, that is why we have guests on this show, because they bring things we never thought of. Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, but this is a time where it works. So I think you might be right. He may be the MC was asked to come out, but he may be the head of one of these, either the Bucharest Academy of Science or the head of the Transylvania Neurological Society.
He may be, and he's very excited.
He seems really into this.
Yeah. And he's got crazy hair. It looks like a helmet.
That's not as bad as Gene Wilder. But
no, well, I mean, that goes without saying.
He is the only one clapping, though.
I know. That is so crazy. Yeah, the whole audience is just deadpan, and he's all into it and excited, and then claps his way off screen.
Isn't that kind of rude if they're all part of the same? If he's the head, now we gotta ask this: if he is part of the Bucharest Academy of Science or the head of the Transylvania Neurological Society, isn't it kind of rude of his fellow colleagues to not at least clap the introduction?
Well, yeah, I mean that's definitely them showing their disdain for what Frankenstein's doing. You know, I mean, I guess they feel like they should come and entertain the notion of it, but they're not going to clap for himself. Clapped earlier a little bit.
Right, they clapped when he first shows up.
Came out.
Yeah. I mean, the whole theater, they have a shot actually kind of from in the audience looking at the stage, and everyone's got their hands kind of up and clapping, and so they're really happy to see him, but they weren't really happy when he's introducing or saying the name of the next person to take the stage, Dr. Frankenstein.
No, I think they're very skeptical of what they're about to see.
Okay, let's go back all the way then to Brainy Smurf, the medical student, who kept talking about the family name. Does everyone know the story of Frankenstein? Because that would explain why nobody's really hot on this idea of we're about to watch this creature come out.
Well, and you've got the police force mobilized to the theater, which probably doesn't happen for your typical...
No, generally speaking, we've already said that. None of us can remember cops showing
Yeah.
up and blocking the exits.
Especially, and even in this weird town, I would say they don't show up for that. Everybody's kind of in their society best. We do know that the whole town has been kind of up in arms about this and that they've had this happen 5 previous times before. So, yeah, I would say that they're there because they want to see what happens, but they're not real excited about another Dr. Frankenstein showing up.
Everybody seems to know, at least to have a cautionary side of the story of Frankenstein. They all seem to be... Why is it Elizabeth, who we had earlier, has absolutely no clue of his background, and when he was talking about going over to talk about his family inheritance or anything, it's like, whatever, darling, I've got a party to get to.
I think Elizabeth is the narcissist of narcissists. She cares about what's going on with her, and that's it.
Eric, we didn't have you when we first met Elizabeth, and she's one of those characters who we show at the very beginning, and she doesn't show up until closer to the very end of the movie. What are your thoughts on Madeline Kahn's portrayal of Elizabeth? She
is such a great comedic actress. Yeah, and Elizabeth herself, she does have a little something going on with her that's something of a detriment in her personality, I think. It's sort of the me monster of the room. Talk about a different monster. It's the me monster. It's me. Don't touch my nails. Don't touch my hair. Don't touch my coat. Don't touch my clothes. Don't hug me. Don't kiss me. Yep. I'll rub elbows, and that's about it. She is completely vapid. I would say she doesn't watch the news. She doesn't read a newspaper. She may read a society paper. I think all she knows is she heard he was a doctor, and that's it. Exactly. That's all she cares about. He maybe had a little renown for good or bad. Well, he's a surgeon, a rather brilliant one, if he does say so himself. He's probably got money, and I think that's all she cares about. That is all she cares about. Wow. We're learning a whole lot about her. I would even and she's not even here. Yeah, and even though they're engaged, I would bet she's never even asked about his family. She can't because she has no sense of it. No. It never even comes up, even when she shows up at the castle later, which again, we're not trying to telegraph, but she has absolutely no sense. Everybody else in this room has that sense of, okay, we're not going to clap for this guy because we're not cool with the idea of bringing somebody back from the dead. First of all, we don't believe it or don't buy it, or maybe we know what happened the last 5 times. It just feels, how does everybody in the world know? But the one person who should be closest to him is completely clueless of the family name. Yeah, no, I would say, like, she is the most empty, hollow character maybe of any movie of all time. Like, a spin-off movie of her would be the most dull movie ever. Or it could be like Seinfeld. A show about nothing. Yes, a show about nothing. As we start to bring this minute to a close, because we do get just the initial sense of Gene Wilder's character coming up on stage, and it does look like he's done his best to sort of tame his hair for the evening,
Do you have any other thoughts about this particular minute? Anything that we may have missed as we are diving into minute now 78 of Young Frankenstein?
Yeah, I think we covered everything that this minute offers.
Walt, anything on your notes that we forgot to hit?
The only thing I had was I had done a little bit of digging into Norbert Schiller earlier. And
more than our guest did? Because you're going to have to really top Frankenstein 1970.
Yeah, Frankenstein 1970. But he was on one of my favorite shows ever, and that's The $6 Million Man.
Really?
He had a couple of parts on there, just a couple of cameo type
same
appearances.
Character both times, or like recurring actor but different
recurring
parts?
Actor. And he had a lot of recurring actor kind of parts. And just from a history standpoint, he was born in 1899. So you have a guy in the movie who was born in 1899, and we are talking about his movie in 2018, and it, I think, kind of is a testimony to this awesome film.
You know, our guest last minute, Sean German, was talking about the different kinds of immortality and does your name live on, and the fact that we just mentioned Norbert Schiller's name.
Yeah.
I think that says something about that one of those types of immortality.
Yeah, it really is, and it speaks a lot to this movie.
All right. Well, as we continue to look at the scene in the Opera House, we have to ask all of you out there to come back tomorrow, and we'll give you a sneak peek in just a second. But before I do, if you are fans of Eric, or you're like, hey, this guy's got some insights, he brought up some things that the other hosts didn't have any clue about. Eric, you've got your own podcast. You've been a guest on others. Why don't you let folks tell folks where people can find you and your podcast?
Yeah, Watchmen Minute is the podcast that Travis Bowe and I are co-hosts of. It's going over that movie in the same way as this podcast does for Young Frankenstein. And it's the director's cut of Watchmen, so that's the movie from 2009, the superhero movie by director Zack Snyder. And it is the director's cut.
It's a fantastic story. If you've never picked up the graphic novel, it was released in 12 episodes. Alan Moore, just a brilliant writer. Oh, yeah. And this is just a fantastic story that he mashes up history. We've got Nixon running for office, but it's kind of in the 80s. There's some side stories that act as an analogy to are they in the director's cut? Is that whole thing about the man lost at sea and the pirates? Is that all in the director's cut?
At that point, you can pick up a separate the cartoon. It's an animated take on that. It's a comic within the comic in the book.
Right.
It's a separate thing for the director's cut, but then there's the ultimate cut, which I have not watched, which does insert it in.
Because I thought they had filmed or had something like that, but it was one of the many things they pared down to try to get the movie to a reasonable length in theaters. But I've always loved Alan Moore. I've read so much of his stuff as just a lover of comic books. And to watch Zack Snyder, it's very ambitious, almost trying to frame for frame sometimes capture the way the comic book was illustrated and to the shots you see in the Watchmen Minute. So if you're a fan of the Watchmen movie, check it out, because these guys are digesting it 1 minute at a time. And from the screenshots you guys are sharing and everything that I follow you guys on Facebook and your listeners group and stuff, you are really getting some cool analysis of what's going on in this movie.
Yeah, and we have, you can find us everywhere, Watchmen Minute. You can just Google it and get to all our iTunes and Stitcher and Spotify and all those, every other podcaster that I'm aware of seems to have it. Then, on Facebook, we have Watchmen Minute is our page, and our listeners group is Crime Busters Listener Society. And we have at least, there's a couple guys that chime in quite often that are very knowledgeable. I'm very happy that they're in there, keeping us a little bit honest and getting, highlighting some things that kind of maybe missed or just got a little bit wrong, maybe. Hopefully not real wrong.
We have no knowledge of getting things wrong here on the Wilder Ride. We've got basically Thing 1 and Thing 2 as your hosts. Just like bouncing around like some idiots trying to figure out what we're doing. Walt, it sounded like some of the places where you can listen to the Watchmen Minute are some of the same places where you can listen to the Wilder Ride.
That's right. You can hear us on Stitcher. You can hear us on iTunes. You can hear us just about any place they offer podcasts. I think we're on iHeart now.
Oh, we've been on iHeart. Yeah. We've been on TuneIn Radio. We're everywhere.
We are everywhere.
We're everywhere a podcast want to be.
That's
Sounds
right.
like that should be a credit card.
Well, and one place we hope that you are, if you're listening to this, is in our listeners group. So if you go to facebook.com, go to our page, which is The Wilder Ride, and find our listeners group from there, fill out a couple of quick questions, and join us. And Eric is commenting pretty regularly in our group, and we appreciate that. And there are a lot of good discussions going on there, and we'd love to have you as a part of it.
Absolutely. Lots of fun. And so we want you all to come back tomorrow for minute number 79. Eric, can you come back tomorrow as well? Because you've already kind of walked into the theater with us, and it looks like the cops aren't going to let us out anyway. So do you mind hanging out?
Oh, yeah, I got to hear Gene Wilder talk a little bit here.
All right, so yeah, come on back because we'll start off the minute tomorrow with Dr. Frankenstein taking to the stage, as we saw just a glimpse of him coming into the light in this minute, but we get to see him on stage, and by the end of the minute, he will be introducing his creature to the shrieks of what should be highly educated and very accepting theater goers as well as scientists, but apparently they don't have theater etiquette nor scientific etiquette, and we'll get into that all tomorrow on this, The Wilder Ride, where two casters are infamous.
I don't know that I can top that. Infamous.
It's no longer Frankenstein.
No,
It's
it is
Frankenstein.
not.